Carmen.
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
Hey.
I don't
Okay.
know what's going on. It's still doing it won't show me.
Do you have your video on, like where it says the click, where it gives you the choices and it'll say
Yeah,
share video?
share.
Like if you like, there should be some like choices down at the bottom.
Yeah, when I first came on, it had me on there and then I put, show video and then when it all came up, it's not showing me. And that's what it was doing last week.
Even like where it says, let me see if it says like, if you click on the little down arrow beside the video where it says stop video,
Uh-huh.
it should say like select a camera,
That's what I'm doing and I don't understand.
HP. Mine says like HP wide vision and it says choose virtual background or video settings.
See, I just got this computer
Oh.
and mine says HD webcam with a check mark, and up here at the camera it has a green dot, so it like shows it's doing it, but it's not. I don't know if I need to go in my settings or what.
And it's checked where it says the HP thing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's pretty weird.
I wonder, let me see. Let me
I want
see if you're, let me see if it's your, like I can click on your video. Hold on one second.
I want to figure it out.
No, because it's not showing your, maybe if you do have to go into settings and say use camera.
Like the computer settings.
Usually go down to your, like where your little thing is and go to camera
Uh-huh.
and see if that
Let's see.
will help you. I'm gonna ask my daughter because she knows a lot about this.
Okay.
Can't get her screen to come up, but like it's just black where her name is.
Oh, in the bottom.
Yeah, and she went and checked. Her HP is checked.
Where it says start video. I should put start video.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's not blocked. It's
Yeah.
on.
And I can get her audio, but I wonder if she has to go to settings in her computer. She can see me, but hers just comes up black. But do you wonder if she goes to settings and make sure the camera is on, like, and available? Maybe.
Yeah, that's weird. Because if she's hit start video on the bottom, it should be coming up.
Yeah. She did, and I don't know.
I mean, you think this is the right thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Like, I have to just, well, like it says stop video, but if I unchecked that, then it would go away. But
Let me see here in my settings.
There's not like a red line doing video.
mm-mm.
Like on her screen.
There's not a red line through your like camera icon video, right?
No.
No.
I don't know.
Hey, Karen. Mary's trying to figure out her screen. Trying to get her video to work. Uh-oh. Mine just went off. Oh, there it goes.
I wonder if it's in my actual like camera, because I haven't even went in my actual camera yet.
If you go on the little like Windows icon and then go to camera, and then your camera like itself on the
In the apps, you know.
yeah, like on the where it has your different like settings, and you go to
Yeah.
camera, it should give you.
Okay, let me click on that.
I think this is recording too.
Okay, it says your camera is currently unavailable. Please check if the camera is properly connected.
Oh.
That's weird.
Hmm.
Why wouldn't it be connected? It's with the computer.
Yeah, I wonder if you have to actually go into the setting and like, it's like an HP.
Yeah, it's HD webcam.
Yeah, you should be able to, you should be able like to go into your settings and just, and what you may have to do is like reinstall it or
Yeah, probably. I'm gonna look into it and
I would try
see.
to restart it maybe.
Yeah.
Hi,
You want me,
Becky. How are you?
Good, how are
Mary's trying to
y'all?
get her camera working.
you want
I'm
me to
good.
not worry
Yeah,
about it
almost.
tonight, or you
You
want
can
me?
if you want to. Either way, I mean, it's no big deal. Like, as long as y'all can see like my screen, that's the big. Can y'all see my like PowerPoint notes on my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I did y'all get the handout I sent with the
Yeah.
outline on it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because that outline goes right from the book, the notes, and the PowerPoint. There's just a lot of information in chapter 3, so I just want to make sure that you guys had exactly what you needed. Y'all have to
Okay. Well,
excuse me.
I
I'm
just
sorry?
won't worry about it tonight, and I'll try to figure out what I can do with it because I don't know anything about this computer, you know?
Yeah, I had to do that too when I got this one because it wouldn't work right. But I think if you go
Hopefully,
into the settings and try to redo it, it should.
yeah. Hopefully by Thursday I'll have it on here.
Yeah, well, let me know if you need some help. I'm sure you could call IT at the school too, and they could help you. They're pretty
Yeah.
good about that.
Okay.
Y'all have to excuse my look. I messed my shoulder up over the weekend, and I have to go to ortho tomorrow, so I'm a little bit impaired on the left side. So you'll have to excuse my my.
Well, all I can see is like from right here up on you. So
Yeah,
anyways.
well, yeah, and I usually am very more animated with my hands, or at least do something with my hair. But when you can't work both hands, it's kind of hard. So that's the
It's
joy.
fine.
It's fine. Let me just get my notes. I don't know how many people are going to be on here, but y'all all did fine on the test. Everybody passed the test that I could tell. So the grades should be in after 9 o'clock. I mean, it should be uploaded because everybody will have taken it.
So how will we find out? Will you email us our
If you
grade?
go onto Blackboard after 9, it should have your grade loaded.
Okay.
And it should let you look at the test and have like the ones you got wrong.
Okay. Good deal.
There was one in there that that the answer was wrong, but everybody got credit for it. So if you answered it correctly, so you should see that. It may be marked as wrong, but it wasn't. One of the
Can you
biggest
tell us
ones,
which one it was?
it was the one about when you take respirations. And everyone got it right. It's when you're doing the radial pulse or when you're done. But one of the choices was while you're doing the blood pressure, and that was marked incorrectly. So it was, most people got it right. One of the ones that a lot of people got wrong, and it's an example of something that you might see on the test, and we'll go over the test on Thursday, but it's an example of something that you might see on the certification is it said, a person that comes in with a blood pressure of 180 over 120, they might be, or they, are possibly, or they may be experiencing a hypertensive crisis because that's extreme hypertensive. You can't say an MI because you don't know that. You can't make that diagnosis. That's a trick question, but not really. So some people said, oh, they're having high blood pressure. That would be an extreme. That would be somebody who's having a hypertensive crisis. So that is one that a lot of people got wrong. So just remember that if it gives you a diagnosis, you generally can't say that unless you're diagnosing a rhythm. But as far as like a diagnosis like an MI, I mean, if the question was they were having chest pain and, shortness of breath and their left arm hurt and all the classic symptoms, and that was one of your choices, then you'd be safe. But just a blood pressure that's out of control, that's a hypertensive crisis. So that was one of them. I can't remember any that were general. A 12-year-old would have at a respiratory rate of 42. not normal. So a lot of people mark that as normal.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah, it wouldn't be normal for a 12-year-old. It might be semi-normal for an infant, but you just, like at 12 years old, your baseline should be getting, and there was a couple about the baseline, like where your baseline is, like that's a huge one. You always want to know what your baseline is. So I'm going to go through this outline and give y'all what you need to know on this outline, because this chapter 3 is very, very important in moving forward. So it's a lot, again, it's a lot of information, but you guys are here. And so if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me, because these are the things that you're going to see again. And a lot of this, especially like blood flow and the systems, how they work together, you're going to continue to see that. So if you don't understand it, let me know.
Okay.
All right. So chapter 3 is all about the anatomy and physiology. And of course, those terms on this PowerPoint, those come straight from the book, and they're exactly what they are. So as long as y'all know the difference, anatomy is the structures of the heart, and physiology is, well, not the structures of the heart, but the structures of the body or whatever system. So the anatomy is the parts, and the study of the structures is parts of your system. But the physiology is how that system functions. As long as y'all know the difference in the two. One's just the parts, and one's how they work together to function. Homeostasis, do y'all know what that is? I don't know if y'all read ahead. It's basically, in basic terms, it's a balance of the balance and stability has to be maintained in your body, and how it does that. Homeostasis is that state of balance, because you're going to find that when you study, like when we go into problems, if you have a problem in your cardiovascular system, you are going to have a problem like in your respiratory system. So they got to work together to maintain homeostasis. And if they don't, then it gets out of balance. So everything's always trying to balance each other. And as far as like homeostasis, it's basically all those systems working together so they can all function at their best possible like state. So it's just that maintaining balance and stability. Remember that. Metabolism, it's what you need to know for this is exactly what it says. It's a physical and chemical process to maintain homeostasis. That's what your metabolism is. It's basically the body systems all physically and chemically working together to maintain homeostasis. All right, anybody got questions on those?
No.
Okay. Just remember those points. I don't think there's a lot to that. As long as y'all know those, you're good. Do you know the 10 body systems? Y'all probably studied that in medical terminology. Just know what each one makes up. You know, the skin, what it does, musculoskeletal, what it does. It's there for protection. The cardiovascular, you know, that's going to be important. What does it do? Circulates blood, circulates gases, takes nutrients to the cells, and then transports all that waste back. So cardiovascular and respiratory go hand in hand. So just know that respiratory provides the oxygen to the cells and gets rid of the carbon dioxide, but how does it do that? Through your cardiovascular system, right? Because it's carrying it. So those two are going to go hand in hand. You'll see that a lot. Are y'all good with those two?
Yeah.
Okay. Then your nervous system, that's a big one. Your nervous system, what you need to know about that is what it does. It maintains and it sends and receives information from outside the body and inside, right? So it interprets information or stimuli, and it it helps to, hold on one second, let me move my page here. I want to make sure I have what you guys have. Because my outline doesn't go, this outline doesn't go with the PowerPoint notes. I'm just realizing that. Yeah, let's go back. If you look on that, one of those pages of the notes, of the outline, do y'all see the one that starts with nervous system? It's like page 4, maybe 4. It starts with nervous system.
Yeah.
Let's go there, go to that section because I want to make sure y'all have this in relationship to this PowerPoint. Do y'all follow along on your outline and write it down as you go, or how do y'all do that when you're doing your lecture?
I usually write it down.
Yeah.
Are you using the outline to go by?
Yeah.
Yes.
PowerPoint that you send us. Yeah.
The one that was the blank
Yeah.
outline
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that looked like this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well then, let's go by that. But if y'all are on the nervous system page, let's go over that. And then we can go, let's go back. Where are you guys? Are you on the first page?
We're on the first page.
Okay.
10
You got
bodies.
okay. Well, let's just keep
10
going
body
there.
systems.
Okay. Well, let's just go there and we'll get through the PowerPoints, but let's go over this sheet since that's where you guys are and there's just 3 of you here. So we're back on page 1. So the purpose of this cardiovascular system, what is that? Y'all know what that, y'all get that part? Did y'all already get that written down?
Yes.
The purpose of the cardiovascular system is to circulate blood and nutrients to all the cells and transport gases and waste away from the cell. Okay.
But we didn't get the 10 body systems. I didn't.
Those are in your chapter, but they would be your integumentary, that's the skin. The musculoskeletal, which is like the muscles and the framework that protects everything. Respiratory, which provides oxygen and gets rid of carbon dioxide. Your nervous system, which sends and receives information from outside the body, coordinates your functions inside the body. It receives like stimuli from outside. Gastrointestinal, that's your GI system. It digests, it makes waste. There's a good chart in your book, I think. I'm not sure what page it's in, that 3rd chapter that has all these listed. Your endocrine, which regulates all your hormones, regulates body function. Lymphatic, removes waste, excess fluids from the body tissues. Lymphatic system is also key in transporting white blood cells to help fight infection. Reproductive, that's your hormones, male and female sex hormones. And so again, what's important about all that? How do these all work together to maintain what? Homeostasis.
Homeostasis.
Right. So you want to make sure you're maintaining homeostasis. So back on your sheet, the purpose of the cardiovascular system is what?
Circulates blood, gases, and nutrients to all cells, transports waste away from cells.
Exactly. Okay. And that's what you need to know, is make sure that you're relating it to the respiratory system. So respiratory system is providing oxygen to all the cells, and it rids the body of CO2, but it does this by way of the blood. So are we all good with those?
Yes.
Okay. I think this follows along on the PowerPoint, follows along with this first page with your anatomical terms. Do y'all see that?
Yes.
You'll see these terms a lot because they're not going to use like are just slang words. They're going to always use these. So just know that these anatomical terms, you'll have to know those. So like just with your axillary temperature, the axilla is what? Your armpit, basically. And these are good, like, these actually are in your book, these pictures. Thorax is also called your chest. And I'm trying to keep it basic so you guys don't have to get bogged down in a lot of other stuff. You're just going to see these words and it's good to know what they mean. The thoracic cavity is that cavity within your chest. This. So it's basically, this is your thorax, but this area inside your chest is the thoracic cavity. You're going to hear mediastinum, which is this central part of your chest, the thoracic cavity, and it's where the heart is located. So if somebody asks you where the heart is located, it's inside the thoracic cavity, but it's also inside the mediastinum. So it's a box within a box. You have the thoracic cavity, and inside that is where the mediastinum is, where the heart is. The clavicle, that's your collarbone. You're going to hear mid-clavicular line because you're going to base your EKG electrodes on that line. So if it's mid-clavicular, you know this is the clavicle. Mid is going to be dead center of that. So if you hear that term, you'll know left or right is dead center of your collarbone. So if you find the person's collarbone, you'll be able to tell where the mid is, because you will have to place one of your electrodes like on that line. And the sternum, have y'all heard that before? That's this breastbone here. And if you feel it, it goes down and then it stops. You can feel where that is, because when you're placing your electrodes, when you're doing EKGs, you are going to feel for that on a person, and everybody's size and their chest is different. So you'll have to feel for that. So those are the places you want to be able to feel on your patient. Their clavicle, their sternum, that's going to give you points of reference. Even if you have an odd patient that has like everything flipped inside their body, you can still do an appropriate EKG because you can find your points on their body. Y'all good with that? Anybody got questions about it?
No.
Okay. Your anatomical terms, you're just going to have to know those. Anterior is their front, or ventral. If you ever hear like they have a ventral hernia, that's one on the front. You can usually feel those right under the sternum. So your anterior is your front of your body, and posterior is your back. So your dorsal is your back, like a dorsal fin on like a fish or a dolphin or shark, that's on the back. And then your ventral is on the front. So you could either hear anterior or ventral. You might get a question with one or the other. Superior would be towards the head, and inferior is going to be away from the head. So you don't want to say up or down, because that's not going to be your point of reference. Just remember that if it's superior, it is towards the head, and if it's inferior, it's away from the head. So like when we study the heart, arteries and vessels of the heart, the superior vena cava is going to be up towards the head, and the inferior will be away from the head. That's how you'll be able to tell the difference. Lateral, of course, is to the side of your body, so away from your midline. If you cut a line straight down your body, that's your midline. So lateral is going to be to the side, away from it. Proximal is going to be closer to your torso. And distal is away from the torso.
What about me?
Yeah, medial is towards the midline. I skipped that one, didn't I? So yeah, so you're going to have medial and lateral. Lateral is going to be towards the side. Medial is going to be towards the midline. So just remember your M and M, medial, midline.
And proximal again? I'm sorry.
Is close. It's okay. It's closer. So then when you're talking about distal and proximal, that has to do with your torso. So if it's distal, like your distal, you know, your knee is distal, right, to your torso. Proximal is going to be closer. So your thigh is what is proximal to your torso in relationship to your knee. So everything is a relationship. So distal is farther away from your torso, and proximal is closer to your torso. So like your distal radius is like your distal radial artery where you feel your pulse. That's distal because it's away from your torso. And then the other term there is intercostal, which is between the ribs. You'll hear that a lot because where you place your electrodes will sometimes be like the fourth intercostal space. So that's going to be, you'll count that down. You'll physically put your hands on the patient and count the fourth intercostal space. So those are the spaces between the ribs. Everybody good with those terms? They're just boring terms. So we talked about midline, the lines of reference. Those are those imaginary lines for your body. So we talked about midline. That's this midline. Cut your body straight in half, and that's your midline. That would cut your sternum straight in half. Your clavicle is your collarbone, so that mid-clavicular line is exactly what it says. It's going to give you that line straight down, middle of your clavicle, straight down. So it literally, actually, if you have a patient and you need to put it on their, you know, mid-clavicular, you know, fifth intercostal space, you should be able to just run your line straight down and find that space, and you'll know exactly where to put it. And then your anterior, so you already know what anterior is, the front. Axillary is your arm, like armpit. So anterior axillary is going to be that front of the armpit. So if you know, it's going to run parallel to the mid-clavicular. So if you're just, like if you're looking at this graph, that's exactly what it is. It's right the front of that armpit. That's your anterior axillary line. So basically, if you're cutting these into sections, they all run parallel.
Okay.
So it's that front of your armpit, basically, is your anterior. Now your mid-axillary, because that's where you're going to put one of your electrodes, is, if you look over here on this side, this is it here. It's just mid-axillary. It's straight in the middle of your armpit, like if you go down.
Like in the middle of your chest, kind of on the side?
Straight on. If you raise your arm, which I can't do it this side, but if you raise your arm and you cut a line straight down your side from the middle of your armpit down, that would be your mid-axillary line. So you have this anterior axillary, and then you have this mid. You see how this person is like a side view?
Yes.
That's your anterior, and then your mid-axillary. And then, of course, your posterior is going to be towards the back. So you basically, if you lift your arm up over your head and feel your armpit where you shave and you draw a line straight down, that's your mid-axillary line.
Okay.
So you'll just know that's how it looks from the side, and you can't really see it from the front, but that's, everything cuts into lines. So you can count, you can feel, like those are, if you just make an imaginary line, you won't have any problem. Mid-axillary will just be in the middle of that armpit. Everybody have questions about those at all?
What do we put down for posterior
It's that
axillary
back.
line?
So if you looked at this, you see this 3-3 image?
Mm-hmm.
There's the axillary, so that's towards the front. That's the middle, and then this posterior is the back. So if I was looking at you from the back and you had your arm raised, it's this line. It's just the back of your armpit, basically. Because posterior is going to be the back, your back. So if you cut your side into 3, you're going to have 3 lines. One's going to be to the front, one's going to be in the middle, and one's going to be at the back of your, basically cut your armpit into 3. If I'm looking at you from the side. Does that make better sense?
Yeah.
We're just basically cutting all these lines. Let's see, what page I'm on now?
Cardiovascular.
And circulatory, okay. So we're back to our systems because we studied all those other ones, but then of course we're going to focus a lot on cardiovascular and respiratory. So what you need to know about cardiovascular is what makes up your cardiovascular system: your heart, your blood vessels, and the blood. That's what's going to make up your cardiovascular system.
It's made of what? You said the heart?
The heart, your blood vessels, and blood.
Okay.
Those are the 3 things.
Okay.
So the heart location, we're going to call it exactly what we just called it. So it's in your chest, but it's in the thoracic cavity. And where does it sit?
Mediastinum.
Yep, it's between the lungs in the mediastinum. So if you have to describe where the heart is located, we're going to say it's in the chest or the thoracic cavity. It sits between the lungs in the mediastinum. It's just a little left of the midline. If you put your hands over your chest, it's going to actually be between the second rib, so your second rib down, and like the 5th intercostal space. That's kind of, if you're looking at the front of someone, that's where it sits. If we go back up here to this, you see this is your midline, so it's slightly left of the midline. There's your second rib to your 5th intercostal space. It's an average person. Babies are going to be different, but if you're asked to know where it is, you will know that it sits in the thoracic cavity, in the mediastinum, between the lungs. And we call this the base, even though it seems opposite. This is the base at the top. I know we talked about that last time, but this is the apex of the heart, and this is the base of the heart. And the base of the heart is the more narrow, it's more superior. That means it's towards the head. And the apex is more pointing towards like the left hip. This is the apex of the heart sits down here at this 5th intercostal space.
Okay.
So you should be able to describe like where it is. If you have to see that, you just know those are, and basically what that's doing is getting you to reference the terms that they want you to use. Thoracic cavity, mediastinum, the apex, the base. Everybody good with the apex and the base, because that sometimes will confuse you just because it seems like the base should be at the bottom, but it's not. When you listen for an apical pulse, you're listening down here at the apex. What is the heart, or y'all, the function of the heart?
Yes, ma'am.
What does it do? It pumps blood, right? That's really what we know.
Yes.
It pumps blood through its vessels to all the cells of the body. And then you know that the blood contains oxygen and nutrients and gas. So the heart is responsible for all of that, transporting all of that and bringing the waste products back. There's 4 chambers in the heart. We'll get to the heart anatomy. Just know that there's 2 upper and 2 lower, and the upper receive blood and the lower pump it out. But we'll get more in depth with the heart. That this is just getting you used to the terms and the anatomy of it. Blood, do you know how many liters of blood your body carries?
5 to 6.
Right, 5 to 6. It's made of formed elements and plasma. Those are the solid and the liquid parts of the blood.
So just plasma?
Plasma and formed elements. So if somebody asks you what's blood made of, plasma and formed elements. You won't have to know like the percentage, but plasma makes up about 40 or 55%, and the formed elements make up about 45%. But the plasma is that liquid, mostly water, straw colored part of the blood that a lot of people donate plasma because it carries a lot of like nutrients and immunoglobulins. But plasma really, it just carries like nutrients and blood clotting hormones and proteins. And the formed elements are your erythrocytes, your leukocytes, and your thrombocytes. So those are the solid portions of your blood. It seems like a lot of detailed information, but just know that the blood's made up of those 2 elements, and the formed part are those erythrocytes, which are your red blood cells.
So that's the purpose of the blood, or?
The purpose is to pump. The purpose of the blood is to carry the nutrients, the oxygen, the gas, the hormone to the cells of the body.
Okay.
And what it's carrying is the plasma and the formed elements. Why do we need to know that? Because like erythrocytes, those are your red blood cells. They contain hemoglobin, or the protein, and that's where oxygen is carried.
Okay.
So your red blood cells are important because they're carrying the oxygen on those proteins, the hemoglobin. So the purpose, it's carrying CO2 and O2 on the hemoglobin. So again, you think, oh, if your respiratory system is messed up, then that's going to be messed up. So if your cardiac system is not pumping right, then you're not getting that oxygen and not taking away the CO2 appropriately. That's why they work together so close.
So hemoglobin carries CO2?
The hemoglobin carries oxygen and CO2.
Okay.
So it carries the oxygen. Like once it gets oxygenated in the heart by the lungs, then it gets pumped out to the body. So your heart needs to be able to pump that to the rest of your body so that, the rest of your body gets the oxygen and the blood and the nutrients that it needs. Leukocytes, those are just white blood cells. So you'll know if you see that. White blood cells do what? They destroy pathogens. They produce antibodies. They help fight infection. Thrombocytes, that's part of the blood. They are responsible for blood clotting. That's part of the formed elements. They're also called platelets. But when you see that root word thrombo right there, that means clot. So you'll know that has something, cyte is like cell. These are just, unfortunately, just terms. Are y'all okay with those?
Yeah, we're on arteries now.
Yep, the arteries. There's 3 blood vessels that y'all have to know that are involved in the cardiovascular system. That's your arteries, we'll get on the capillaries and the veins, basically. Your arteries, what do you need to know about that? They carry blood that's oxygenated away from the heart. Now, I will tell you, there's a secret that there is going to be one case, and we're going to learn about this later, where arteries are not going to have oxygenated blood. But for right now, just know that arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. So if I say what did arteries do, they carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. You'll have that a million times. So oxygen-rich blood, that's oxygenated blood. It's carried in the arteries. Capillaries. So like basically, you'll see this later on too, but when your arteries leave the heart with all that oxygenated blood, they go into your system where they get smaller. They're called arterioles, and then they eventually meet the capillaries where all this exchange takes place of oxygen, nutrients, and then they take back the carbon dioxide. So y'all know that's what's happening. When your blood is pumping, it's pumping out this oxygen-rich blood through the arteries, and it's going through the system that's basically ends at the capillaries where it exchanges that oxygen-rich blood for the blood that's been filtered. So it's taking the nutrients, the gas, the oxygen away from the heart to the body, and it's collecting all that blood that's now deoxygenated and carrying the waste products and sending it back through the veins. So the veins carry the blood toward the heart. And that blood is what? Is going to be what? Do you think it has a lot of oxygen in it? No. It's oxygen depleted. So if you hear deoxygenated, oxygen depleted, that's the blood that's coming back to the heart from the body. So it's just like a repetitive cyclical pattern. And if you can get that pattern down, this will all make more sense to you as we go. So the pattern is no matter where you start on the cycle, it's going to be the same pattern. The capillaries was where the exchange takes place. The veins take all that depleted blood back to the heart. The heart reoxygenizes it, and then the arteries take that oxygen-rich blood and puts it back to the heart. Back to the body. So it's a big cyclical pattern. Are y'all good with those?
Yes, ma'am.
It seems like a lot. It seems like a lot to take in when you're looking at these PowerPoints, but really, if you can get just that cyclical pattern in your head, you've like won a lot of the battle with this heart stuff.
Yeah.
It's a closed system. It just continues to happen as the heart beats. There's your location of the heart. Let's see. We already talked about that. This is what I was telling you about, the components of the blood. See, this is the plasma.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part of your formed elements. You got red blood cells, white blood cells, thrombocytes or platelets. This is what's in your blood. Here's the closed system I was telling you about. What you're always going to see as like this red color is going to be oxygenated blood. And then this bluish color is going to be deoxygenated blood, which that ought to make sense because on your last test you talked about cyanosis. You can associate that with blue. In most of the medical papers that you read or see, this blue is going to be deoxygenated blood. And this is that closed system I was telling you about. This is carrying oxygen-rich blood. They get smaller. This is where the exchange takes place. And then this is going where? Back to the heart. It's just a big cyclical pattern. Are y'all okay with that? You have questions about that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's just to reiterate what we were just talking about. Respiratory system, again, they both go hand in hand. You kind of have to know the parts of the respiratory system so you know where these things lie, because when you're doing an EKG or you're having somebody who has trouble breathing, these are the parts of the respiratory system you need to know. The diaphragm is just that muscle that divides the abdomen and thoracic cavity. I tried to like cut all this information down to like what you really have to know rather than getting bogged down in a lot of this. There's a good graph in your chart that shows you the parts of the respiratory system. The pharynx, it just is the way it flows. The pharynx is your throat. Your larynx sits at the top of the trachea. The trachea leads down to your lungs. It separates into the right and left lung, or the bronchioles, the bronchus, the bronchioles. And then down at the bottom are all these little like fingers. That's the alveoli, and that's where the exchange of oxygen takes place.
So it's pretty much.
That's just your respiratory system, and this is in the alveoli what's happening. And do you see what's happening here? What kind of blood is this? This is full of what?
Oxygen.
Oxygen, and this is not. So this is what's happening in the lungs. The blood's going in, it's getting oxygen, and it's going back out. So this is where that exchange takes place. That's all what you need to know about this respiratory anatomy. Uh-oh, let me get my page. Okay, what's the next page? Nervous system?
Yes.
Okay, so the nervous system, and then we'll stop after the nervous system. But you can get really bogged down in this stuff too, but really what you need to know, it all kind of relates together, is the nervous system basically responds to stimuli. So what stimuli? It's just changes that happen. They can be environmental. It's information from outside the body that your nervous system uses to prompt your body to respond. Like stimuli, your body needs to pump, right? So it's stimulating the cardiovascular system to pump blood. Your nervous system is responsible for all of that, those electrical impulses. So you have a central nervous system and a peripheral. Your central is basically your brain and your spinal cord. The peripheral are all those nerves that extend off of the spinal cord and throughout your body. You have part of your peripheral nervous system is made up of your somatic and your autonomic nervous system. Just remember that the somatic part of your peripheral nervous system is actions that you control. They're voluntary. If I touch something hot, I pull my hand away, that is a voluntary action. Breathing, heartbeat, blinking, those are not. That is part of your autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic is part that you don't control.
Okay, never mind. I found it. The somatic was the
Voluntary action.
division.
Somatic is all your actions that you control. So me moving my arm, me moving my foot away from a snake, those are all actions that I control. Those are somatic. They're voluntary actions. The autonomic ones are ones that you can't control. Breathing, heart rate, or heartbeat. You can't control those. I mean, yeah. And just think about autopilot. Like that is not, the person is not in control. So your autonomic nervous system is happening without you controlling it. Those are just electrical impulses, like nervous system stimuli. It makes your body respond regardless. So like if you're bleeding and your heart rate goes up because your body realizes it needs more oxygen and it's depleted, that's an autonomic response. That is happening without you controlling it. And then your autonomic nervous system, it has two parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is what it's what you hear, fight or flight. So that parasympathetic is, I see a bear, my heart rate goes up, I'm in fear, do I run or do I stay and fight? That's all part of that sympathetic nervous system. You're not controlling your heart rate at that point. Your breathing is going to go up. All those hormones kick in, your adrenaline kicks in. That's your sympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate goes up. What's going to happen then? Your body needs to then maintain homeostasis. So the parasympathetic nervous system will kick in and help to reestablish your heart rate. It'll bring your heart rate down. It'll bring your respiratory rate down, your blood pressure down. That's just part of your body working to make everything back to normal again. They work opposite of each other. And why do they do that? To maintain homeostasis. So it all comes full circle. All your systems have to work together to maintain homeostasis. You have questions on any of that? There's a graph in your book about this. It can be really like a lot of words and information, but if you just remember the basics to each and keywords, then it'll all be triggered when you're talking about it or you have it on a test. Are you all good with those? Do you have questions about any of that?
No.
That was a mild no.
So, is this all we're going to go over tonight?
Yeah, because our class was just from 8 to 9 because it's over at 9, and then we'll finish going over the rest of it on Thursday because the class from Thursday will be 6 to 9.
Okay, so we'll start at layers of the heart on Thursday.
Yes. Mm-hmm. because anybody else who didn't listen to the, or wasn't here for this needs to listen to it, and then fill out their outline, and then we'll review it again. And I sent y'all some handouts, and I will write on those handouts and like have them up so y'all can follow. And did y'all get all those handouts I sent you?
Yes, ma'am.
And there was a ton of them, but everybody learns a different way. And since we're not sitting in class and this is just weird to learn this information, I tried to give y'all handouts that would fit like I'm a writer. So for me to learn something, I need to write it down. I need to see it on paper. I need to be able to like transcribe it. So all those handouts, there was different ones, but it all covers the same material. Because we will get into like the blood flow and the heart stuff. But if you guys have any questions about anything that we went over here, but if it's on this outline and you can just write 1 or 2 words on each little thing, you should do fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Because this is, if you can learn all of this, especially that system of the exchange of blood, that will help, because part of chapter 3 is going over that flow of blood, and that seems to be the part that sticks everybody, and we spent a lot more time in class. And again, everybody learned it a different way. Some people even wrote out this diagram on their test because it's easy to remember that flow of blood through the heart when it's pumped. So that's going to be key of just figuring out how you guys learn. I did hear that they may let school go back in like in June, which would be nice because there's some hands-on stuff, but I don't know. So
Okay, so
we'll get it
when we
worked
go
out.
in Blackboard to see our score, what do we go under?
You should be able to go under, there's a section called My Grades.
Okay.
You should be able to see that in Blackboard. Under your, when you pull up your,
Courses or something?
when you go under like your section, it should give you all your, like those different sections. And then one of them should say My Grades at the bottom, if I remember correctly, right? Under Blackboard, if you go down, it says My Grades. Yeah, I think so. You should be able to see that. And it should, I have it set so y'all can look at it and be able to tell what you missed. It should, after 9 o'clock, I think because that's when, or maybe after 8, that's when everybody should be able to look at it, because that's when it was due. It won't let anybody take the test after that.
Okay.
And so if you miss stuff on that and you have questions, then just let me know. It should give you the right answer. Some of those I think were just that maybe I read them too fast, but you'll be fine.
Okay, so our questions for chapter 3 are due Thursday, right?
Right, because that is, it's getting everyone to like read the chapter before we discuss it. That way, even if you're just going through and finding the answers, you're getting familiar with it before we talk about it. Because these
Okay.
first couple chapters move so quickly, but we will spend as much time as we need to on this chapter because this one is important,
Okay.
especially with the blood flow. But chapter 3 and chapter 4 we'll get through and then have a test like next. It's easier to break them up than have a test on 6 chapters at once because it's a lot of information. So
Yeah, don't do that to me.
no, I know. It's easier to break it up because you're learning this. This will build on chapter 4. Then it's because I think chapter 4 is like disorders or like problems with respiratory. I mean, it builds on each other, and I'm trying to break it up into those sections because like chapter 9 is all rhythms. So we want to be done like after 8, then a test, 9 is broken up into 2 tests because it's just a lot of information. And I feel like if you learn it as you go and test on it, then you do better. But you'll do fine. I pulled all this from the exam. So if you guys know this stuff, you won't have problems.
Okay.
Just go back and look at anything you miss. If you have questions on that, just let me know. Everybody passed, so
Okay.
just let me know if y'all have questions.
And our questions for our homework that we do, that's
Mhm.
graded, right? Like,
You get credit for your homework. It's not graded the same as a test, but you do get like extra points for that. So, and there's points for class participation and homework. There's a lot of extra chances. Chapter 10 is a test in itself, so that's a good way to pull it up. I know they think I'm crazy doing that, but chapter 9 is so big that chapter 10 is just basically emergency stuff, and it's basically the last test, and so there's ways to pull up your grade too. So, and I
okay.
always look if everybody misses the same question, then of course I'll throw it out. Or if most of the people miss the same question, then I'll throw it out. But if it's something that really was should have been like that one question on there about the respiratory rate of a 12-year-old, like that's right there in the chart. But if you have questions or want to know about something you missed, just feel free to ask me.
Okay.
All righty. Well, y'all have a good week, and if you have questions, let me know. And otherwise, I don't know if I sent it out or not, but I'll set up the one for Thursday if not.
I don't think so.
Okay. I think I was waiting till this one, so I didn't get confused.
Okay.
All right. Y'all have a good one. If you have
Thank
questions,
you.
let me know.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Bye, Mary.
Bye.
Oh, wait.